to C Major Before the Show, and that's me playing live this morning. I'm going to be doing a lot of moving around in today's show because we have so much to get to. We have some playing to do, we have some explaining to do, and I'm glad you're here. So thank you so much for joining me, and we are going ahead and pleasing your ears like we promised and broadcasting something new. Okay, so today's agenda is to bring you some minor chords today. We've been talking about that. We've been talking about doing that. And so I'm going to be bringing you some minor chords, or questions about minor chords. And then I'm going to talk about some other chords that we've dealt with in the past and how to form a chord drill. So I hope you'll stick around for that. Okay, so I'll be interspersing my talk with my playing because it's easier for me to do that. So in the last episode, what I did was I talked with you about some flat chords. I know I did. I was here when that happened. And I talked with you about a D flat major chord. I talked with you about an E flat chord. I talked with you about an A flat chord. So just so you can remember how those sound, that's a D flat chord. That's an E flat chord. That's an A flat chord. We also went over G flat, and then we went over B flat, and then we went over B. So I hope you were able to get that. I think I posted those chords over in CMajorsClassroom, so always feel free to join me over there because I have a blog set up on WordPress, and in the future I may expand that because I want you to feel like you're getting everything that you need over there in terms of the content that we share here on the show. So this is all live content. Today is going to be a little less scripted. So just know that we have a lot of moving parts to today's show and a lot of things to get to. So we are aiming to explain the chords that we're going to be playing today. Talk about how to make those chords minor, provide you with a chord drill so that you may practice these chords, and also include the chords that you've used so far on C Major Before the Show. So when I started teaching you chords, I believe we started with C Major, with the C Major triad. And everything is mostly in triad form. So it's meant to be friendly. It's meant to motivate you. It's meant to get you going. It's meant to be an entryway into learning more and more and more about music. So I know there are a lot of philosophies out there. I know some people are very stunned about how I think about music and music making. And quite frankly, I'm stunned by how some of my friends think, but we're still friends. So there's a lot of opinions out there about how to make music and how to approach it. And I feel very secure in the way that I teach. But at the same time, I consider myself a student, meaning I don't ever stop learning. If I had my way, I would be in school all the time, nonstop. But then as you grow and become a grown-up, you know that's not possible. You have to actually stop and do some work. So, but believe you me, if I had my choice, I would be in school non-stop. I would never stop going to school. I just love being in school that much. So it's all about learning. It's all about learning to apply what you know, what you feel comfortable learning, and stretching yourself. And I have the good fortune of having adult students that stretch me as much as I'm trying to stretch them. So as much as I have adult students who come to me and say, C Major, can you please teach me my favorite pop song? Can you teach me how to play like? And they'll fill in the blank, of course. And so as much as they want to learn songs and not necessarily method, what I love about the beauty of the relationship with my students is that it grows over time. So as much as they want to see themselves grow, they also want me to demonstrate where I am in my own music making. So I think as a teacher, it's important. It really is important to stay out there and to stay doing something. So I'm going to be talking about that coming up a little bit later in the podcast. And I don't want this show to be all about me in the beginning. I want to stay focused on what you're going to be learning in today's show. So we have some fun. And again, I will be playing live at the piano, so you may hear a mix of, me just kind of doodling around. I also have an announcement about my plans to start writing again. So even if I just play chords and just noodle around, you can ask me what was I doing on the piano, and I can just tell you what I was doing. Also, if you've had a chance to look over at the website, if you are taking a look over there, we're starting to get some viewership over there. I really appreciate that. That's great. If you are starting to look over there, you'll notice that I have color-coded some of the pictures with Post-it strips, and we're not endorsed by Post-it. I would love to be endorsed by 3M or any company that wants to help us with that color idea. But, you have to be careful with that, because if you don't have permission to use their products exclusively and things like that, it can become an issue. But anybody listening from 3M or Post-it that wants to reach out to us, I'm open to that. But at the same time, if I need to limit the posting of postage strips to label the keys, just let me know. You don't have to start dimming my pictures and taking them down, because I want them to stay up, because it's for educational purposes and not necessarily for the purpose of, trying to profit off of postage strips. But I love postage strips. I think they're great. I love Crayola. I love anything with color that can be used to label. And so I'm leaving that up to you, thinking about that, because what happened back in the 1950s, as you know, is one of my favorite times to talk about, because a lot of interesting music making was going on back then. A lot of interesting music instruction was going on. They had a display card they could insert at the back of the black keys on a keyboard. The black keys would help, the space between the black keys and the fall board would help this poster to stay up, and all of the keys were color-coded that way. So people could learn to play the piano by color. That's just one way of learning. So, but I think it's possible now, if you start looking through any of the methods that are out there, especially for young students, that it's possible to color code the keys any way that you wish, based on your own idea of what it should be. And the other good news is, if you run out of color ideas, you can start using shapes. You can use stickers. We used stickers in the last show. So that's an idea too. So any sticker companies that are listening to the podcast, anybody that's in charge of marketing and promotion for their company, if they want to reach out to us, feel free. And I will just make sure I clear that with Spreaker, who has been lovely to work with. There's a lot of podcasts out there, and podcasts are growing. People are really growing their podcasts. There are podcast expos, things that I didn't even know about. But I would say Spreaker is at the top of their game, and they're based in New York, I believe. And there's Blog Talk Radio. To me, it's working fine, and I recommend it. So thank you so much to the executives over at Spreaker, and they are not biased towards any podcast over another. I think they're very fair. So anybody that wants to get into podcasting, check out Spreaker, check out Blog Talk Radio, and good luck with your podcasting. Let's give an applause for that. Okay, so I'm going to stop there with my playing because now I want to talk a little bit more because I have a question for you. Did you do your homework? Yes, it's the homework sign. Now, I know last time I played the school bell. I'm not going to do that this fall. I'm just not going to do that because technically we are not a school. We are an online virtual experience of what it's like to learn to play by chords and by color, which is our focus right now. And to have a virtual experience of that and to build content that's going to help you go forward in your music making. For anybody who wants it, just listen in, call up your friends, say, hey, there's this podcast that's talking about playing by chords and by color. I've never heard of such a thing. And just listen in, bring your friends, bring your family, make it a family thing. If you are commuting, if you're driving a truck and you're wanting to know a little bit more about what it takes to play the piano, this is the podcast for you. And there are also very good podcasts that are out there that can teach you as well. But I'll say a little bit more about that probably in a later episode as I begin to find out who's out there and to explore some of the possibilities for you. So I'm actually going to step away from the keyboard for a moment. So excuse me. We don't have our ordinary background noise. I almost said necessary background noise, but background noise is not necessary. But we don't have our ordinary background noise with the air conditioning. I know you have been detecting that over the last few podcasts, but we do have the background noise of, believe it or not, a little personal heater because it's quite chilly here in the greater New York City area today. Today is also the start of Rosh Hashanah. I think that's how you pronounce that. So I know that there are some of my acquaintances that are what's the word? They are how should I say it? I don't want to say celebrating it, but they are observing it. That's what I was looking for. They are observing it. And I know there are other pronunciations of it too, that I'm not sure of, but I've heard reporters, journalists say it the way I just said it. So, but anyway, today is a day when some students are also observing that, and so some lessons have been delayed because of that. But if you are, I wish you all the best in your observance. And also, what I want to say here, I want to take a look at my outline for today. So far, we are on minor chords: D flat minor, E flat minor, A flat minor, G flat minor, B flat minor, and B minor. So we're going to get to that, and I'm going to go back over to the keyboard and play those for you. And also give you a chord drill on minor chords. Also, all chords, major and minor, that you've learned so far here on C Major Before the Show. putting these chords to use, I'm going to give you some examples of sequences, some very friendly examples. Putting rhythms to these chords. Now that's new. And then playing in a fuller position. Everything we've played so far on this podcast has been in root position. Have you noticed? I may have mentioned inversions here and there, but for the most part, I've showed you everything in root position. If you look at the pictures on the CMajor Before the Show website on Facebook, on the page there, you will see that my hand model is showing you how to play chords in root position. And he's dividing the positioning between both hands. A lot of times if you look in these books, they'll just have one hand playing one chord. But we've done it differently. So take a look and just know that the left thumb is responsible for playing the root note of the triad. So that's how we have it set up. Now, next week, just to give you a preview, we're going to be talking about 7th chords. My computer just went dark here. I should fix that sleep feature so I don't have to deal with that. But that's okay. You're live here on CMajor Before the Show. Thank you for joining me today. And so I'm very happy to announce that we have a syllabus available. Yes, we're going to be posting that on CMajorsClassroom. And then the color coding I've talked about a little bit, so I think I'm clear on that. Chord drill cards. Now, this is going to be new because after I play the chord drills, and if I forget today, just send me a message just saying, okay, could you say a little bit more about the chord drill cards? They aren't a product just yet. If I start to get requests for those, then I'll put something together. But a lot of the stuff that we offer, to be honest, is free. This is all free knowledge up to this point. I haven't charged anybody for anything. And if you are interested in lessons, even that is up for grabs, because I'm not saying you have to study with me. You have to study with C Major. I'm saying get into music making however you can. Locate somebody in your community who can work with you. But the chord drill cards, that's a new idea for us, because if you start to really think about how many chords you've learned and then decide how you're going to set your clock to practice those chords, you can create a little drill for yourself. So I would say do it for yourself first, and then later on what may happen is that I'll start to put up a picture of what I think these cards should look like and to help you stay encouraged. So I want you to stay encouraged here on your music journey. If you're taking lessons or what have you, or you're thinking about taking lessons. So today is all about your Monday motivation. Did you notice? It's Monday, and we're here live with you. I want to be here with you on Monday because Tuesday I have something to do. And then Wednesday I have something to do, which I will talk to you about a little bit later in today's episode. And then Thursday we'll be live over at BTR. So join us over there for the C Major Radio Show. We have lots of good things going on over there as well. Now talking with you about rhythm this week over at the C Major Radio Show. Okay, so are you ready? Are you ready to talk about minor chords? And did you do your homework? Did you do your homework from last time? Remember, we also are setting up this third hour. It's going to start filling out more and more and more as we go. I think we went about 10 minutes over into the third hour last week. This week we may go maybe 11 or 12. We may even make it up to 15 if I get carried away. But the idea is to make the third hour longer and longer as we go. And then before you know it, we'll be ready to add even more time to our podcast. And hopefully, at some point, we'll be ready to have you sign up for the CMajor Before The Show app. So I'm really excited about that, because that way you can really start to listen to the podcast on the go. Okay, so now let me mosey on right back over here to this keyboard and play these minor chords. So I want you just to listen to these chords so you can hear for yourself the way that it sounds versus the major chords. And if you have been following the same hand positioning as my hand model, then you're going to see that the hand model does use his right thumb to make the change so that it sounds minor. So we're going to use the same thing. Okay, so now I'm playing a D flat major triad. Okay, hopefully you can hear that. That's D flat major. Now I'm going to make it minor. Okay. So with my young students, they like to think of these chords as happy and then sad. I'm also going to try to keep my foot out the pedal for the moment, because I heard some pedal noise in our podcast the other day. Eventually, what we want to do is broadcast in a way that you don't hear any background noise. So I know there's some tips for that, like putting cushioning, getting some Auralex foam, setting it up like a real studio. Also, to get a better microphone. Now we're over to E flat. I'm moving my right thumb a half step lower, and then back. Okay, so I'm not really calling this out yet the way I want to. Now over to A flat. Now it's really easy to see if you get a chart, a chord chart. They sell them in any music retail store that has the proper distribution contract with the supplier. So just check with them before you go there and say, hey, do you have any chord charts? Now we're on to B flat. I think I just naturally went to B flat. What I should have done was gone to G flat, so let's go to G flat. G flat minor, back to G flat. Okay, I already did B flat, so let me go over to B now. It's a B chord. Minor. And then back to B. So, I did explain how to play all of these chords in our last episode, so I'm not going to do as much explaining about that today. I will describe it a little bit, but I really want you to hear how it's played. Just follow the order, and then follow the drill that I'm going to give you. Okay, so now let's go back. This is D flat minor, back to D flat, E flat minor, back to E flat, A flat minor, back to A flat. Okay, now G flat minor, back to G flat, and then B flat minor, back to B flat, okay, and then over to B. Okay, so hopefully you heard all of that, and hopefully if you're listening through earphones or headphones, that it wasn't too loud in your ear. So don't be afraid to adjust your volume as well. Okay, so you can get into a rhythm with that. So we haven't talked much in terms of time values over here on this podcast. That we are doing over at the CMajor Radio Show. So if you want to know specifically how long to hold these chords, then you'll need to go over there for that. So we're talking in terms of whole notes, we're talking in terms of half notes and quarter notes and eighth notes and 16th notes. And then eventually we'll get to 32nd notes and 64th notes. You're like, say what? 32nd notes and 64th notes. One of my students explained, I didn't know we had notes like that. So they are there, and you will find them, especially in classical music. So some of my students like to argue with me about that. But it's fun. It's all fun. It's all jokes, which music should be fun. And we work really, really hard to have fun. It's a right to have fun in your piano lessons, I believe. So let's go back and let's do our drill. So D flat minor, back to D flat, E flat minor, back to E flat, A flat minor, back to A flat. Now go to G flat minor, back to G flat. Good. Now go to B flat minor, back to B flat, and then end on B minor, back to B. This time I'm going to play it. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to have you listen to the drill, okay? All right, here we go. Now, if you heard any noise at all besides the music, it's because it's raining. It's been very rainy the last couple of days, and you may also hear some traffic noise, and I think that's normal. So it's definitely quieter than it could be, but don't be distracted by that. Just try to hear what we're doing with the drill, and if you have any questions at all, feel free to get in touch with me. Right now, I think my main point of contact is through Facebook and also through Twitter. So I will say a little bit more at the end of the episode how to get in contact with me, but right now I'm using mainly those platforms for communicating, and I feel less overwhelmed than I did before. We restarted our Twitter. We have a fresh new start. I have just not even a handful of followers, really. It's very small right now, and the number of people that I'm following is very small compared to as before. And I kind of want to keep it that way so I can control it a little bit better, and then probably out of nowhere we're just going to start growing. But I want to have it as organic as possible, because I feel like that's the right thing for this podcast, that we are growing in a way that everybody can feel comfortable and not overwhelmed by bots and trolls and everything else that's out there to take your attention away. Now, I will say this. I am a big sports advocate. I love sports. I always have. And I had to choose at one point if I wanted to stay in music or if I wanted to go over to sports. And music won that battle. Music won. So I'm very happy that I've stayed with music, and I've never lost my enthusiasm for sports. But I just have to ask, did anybody see that U.S. Open? Did anybody watch the U.S. Open? And I almost would have given anything to have had tickets to the U.S. Open and to be in that stadium in Queens and see all of that drama. But from time to time, you will see me post my reactions to sports. So whether it's Wimbledon or whether it's the U.S. Open, or sometimes I'll watch, other sports like golf or basketball, football. I'm very much into NFL. I haven't gotten so much into hockey, but I might be getting into that. But I hear the tickets are really expensive. But anyway, I just said that to say that if you see a diversion from my post, because usually what I'm going to do with this new Twitter setup is to tweet and then retweet, or just tweet a link to something that I'm interested in, and occasionally you might see me tweet something that really gets my attention in terms of sports or in terms of what's going on with the music industry. But it won't be much. It won't be like it was before, where I was tweeting live events and just really going nuts when it came to sports, like especially with the Wimbledon competition. But anyway, let me go back to the chords. Okay, so now we have talked about making those major chords that you worked on with me last week into making those minor. So that's what we've been doing. But now I'm going to take you all the way back to when we first started, and our first triad that we talked about was C. Okay, so let's go back to that one. C. And now I'm going to play that as minor, which you already know about. Just look for those chords that were posted by my hand model. And then F minor, back to F, G minor, back to G. And by the way, if you have perfect pitch, you know exactly what I'm hitting. Okay, D minor, back to D, E minor, back to E. Good, and then over to A minor, back to A. Good, now let's go to our flat chords. D minor, back to D flat. Now over to E flat. Okay, now let's go over to A flat. Good, now let's go over to G flat. Let's go over to P flat. And let's go over to B. Okay, so you say, C major, why are you doing this? Because I want you to get it comfortable now starting to mix up your chords, because that's normal. That's going to give me an option, too, to give you a sequence where you're mixing up these chords. So you're not just sticking with 1, 4, 5. If you use that formula, you're just going, okay, I can mix this up a little bit. Now, as far as chord substitutions and all of those things, we may not address that here on this podcast. I would steer you in a direction of either taking lessons from someone who can talk to you more about that, or I can lead you toward a resource, a book perhaps, that can explain a little bit more about that. So I'm almost certain there are some publishers that have really strong reputations for, who have a really strong reputation for explaining this part of chord playing, that it would be a reliable method for you to take a look at. So I'm pretty sure I can provide you a link for that. So feel free, don't feel hesitant about contacting me about that. So I'll be happy to help you with that as best that I can. Okay, so chords are important. Chords are very important because once you understand what they're leading to, what they're leading away from, you really have yourself something. Now, who knows why some people hear chords better than others? Who knows why? It could be just a gift that they have, that they just hear changes easier than others. And if you're one of those people, then that's great. But what I want to challenge you to do, if you are listening to chords and listening to music and figuring out how the order works, just do yourself a favor and figure out also how to label that. So I think every singer should know which chords work best for their voice, which are motivating for them. I think each singer should also know which key is the best key for them. So in the case of you not being classically trained, will you know what key you're singing in and which key to request when you have an accompanist. Things like that. So if that's the case, so you have two different approaches. Learn your chords. Learn the chords. So when you're sitting down, you're playing those plush chords. Learn how to play those chords in the simplest form, and at the same time, how to fatten up those chords, to use my friends' language. My friends like to say, those fat chords, those chords that get you those jobs where fat chords are needed. So I have friends that talk in those terms. Now, I'm going to play some chords for you, just to see if you know what I'm playing, okay? And then I'm going to come back to our drill. So some of these chords we talked about and others we haven't. So let me just play that for you again, okay? So. Okay, so that may be a sequence that you are familiar with. It may be something that you're not familiar with. And so I'm going to leave it up to you to see if it's something that sounds familiar. But we'll come back to this, okay, because I want to talk to you about those chords and the nature of those chords and where they are coming from today. And now what I'm going to do is to give you a sequence to practice. Now, the first sequence, one of the first sequences I gave you used C, F, and G chords. That's just what it used. And so I'm going to stick with that. That's probably the simplest sequence I can give you. So I'm going to call it out to you first, okay, and then we're going to put it together. Not so much in terms of rhythm, but you will feel how it's supposed to go. Okay, so C, C, now go over to F, back to C, 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 now go over to G, and then back to C, F, and then C, then C, over to G, okay, and then back to C. Okay, so hopefully you're able to follow that. And so what I want to do next is to give you another chord sequence to work on. Okay, now this one's going to be a little bit more extensive. It will still contain the C, F, and G chords. So I'm going to go back now over to my computer. So I see it wants to go to sleep. And let me exit from that. I'm not supposed to be playing this. Wow. Okay. Alright, let me see if I can get out of this. Okay. Now, those are definitely chords. But let me go back to the chords I'm trying to get you to work on for today. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to play some music for you, and then I'm going to come back. Okay, I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so you're here back on C Major Before the Show. You're here with C Major Porter. And I apologize for that music break that happened out of nowhere. That was really strange. I just had my iTunes pulled up, and then for some reason, as I was trying to pull myself out of sleep mode, this other song just started playing. But it happened. So here we are, back on C Major Before the Show. And what I want to do now is pull you back into today's topic, which is about minor chords. So let me just minimize this real quick. But things happen when you're live, right? That's the difference between being live and doing an upload or doing your production separately and doing your editing and so forth. Okay. So we've so far talked about minor chords. I've given you a chord drill. We've talked about all of the chords that we were able to show you here on the podcast, the major and minor chords. And now we're starting to put these chords to use. So I've given you one example of a sequence. And then what I'm going to do now is to give you a second example of a sequence using C, F, and G chords. Now, I just hope when I come back to my computer that it will allow me to go to what I need to go to and not something else. Okay, so, all right, here we go. Transparency is great, isn't it? When you start podcasting live, and you just have to be ready for anything to happen. Okay, so here we go. So what I did, and now you can hear the squeaky pedal on this. So not that happy about the squeaky pedal. But you know what? I could use a different pedal. See if I could just do that. Anyway, in a minute I'll check on that. But what I want to have you do is go from a C chord, another C chord, C chord, and go over to G chord, and C chord, C chord, G chord, back to C chord, C chord, C chord, C chord, G chord, then back to C chord, C chord, G chord, and back to C chord. Now go to F chord, G chord, C chord, G chord, G chord, F chord, G chord, G chord, F chord, G 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 ch Okay, so in both cases, the sequences I gave you can actually be used with the song, meaning you can find out how the chords fall on certain words of a song. And so, in the interest of protecting the song and any owners of the song, let me say it like that, out there, I'm just going to give you the sequence, okay? And also what that can do is it can also give you the option to make up your own words to the changes. What does that sequence make you feel like when you're going from C to G and then C to F in that order? What words would you put with it? So it allows you to be a little bit more creative, which reminds me, I was watching a rebroadcast of a show a long, long time ago in the 1980s, and they were just broadcasting this earlier this morning, and the singer at that time was using a track that he could sing along with, and I just couldn't understand what that track, I just couldn't remember which famous song that track reminded me of. I understood what he was doing, so it's not like I just couldn't understand what he was doing. No, it really was. I couldn't figure out why that song reminded me so much of a famous song, but it was definitely done with the whole sound of Electric Boogaloo, that whole thing from the 1980s when breakdancing was popular, and here he was singing a song to a track. So it also made me think, well, maybe he was changing the words to a song that used that same track. But that's the beauty of arranging, and that's the beauty of just understanding how chords work. So if you can follow what chords are doing, if they're leading to something or away from something else, then it can also help you to build your songwriting as well, the way that I understand it. So now let's move into another sequence. Let's keep going. So we have C, F, and G, and then we have a chance to put something else in with that. Okay, so let me see how I'm going to do this. Let me just play it first. Okay, so what I did was I put in a D chord. So far we've used sequences that have used only C, F, and G. Now we're going to throw in a D chord so you can hear how that sounds. I'm going to call out these chords. So here we go. C chord, C chord, C chord, C chord, F chord, C chord, G chord. Oh, let me change that again. C chord, C chord, F chord, C chord, D chord. Now go to G chord, back to C chord, C chord, C chord, C chord, F chord, C chord. Now G chord, back to C chord. Okay, so hopefully you're able to follow that, and if you weren't, you can always go back and play this broadcast again once it posts, because the C Major Before the Show episodes are all available on demand as we post week by week. So feel free to download those. And I'm trying to think now, do I really want to go into another sequence right now? I'm feeling like I do. This one is going to use D, E, A, and G. D, E, A, and G. But I'm also wondering if I should go back and play another one. I'll come back. There's so many sequences you can do. So let me go to one that starts in the key of D just to change it up just a little bit. Okay, so this one is going to go. chords that were used. I used a D chord, I used an E chord, I used an A chord, and I used a G chord. So I'm going to try to call those out. And so you can follow me that way. Okay, so D chord, D, 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 E, 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 E. Now A, 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 now G, back to D. Do it all over again. Okay, and that is taken from a very famous song. But again, you're just following the sequence. You can also decide how much you really want to repeat things as well. So I'll leave that up to you. And just to remind you that our repeat sign is the slash. So we talked a couple of episodes ago. I'm saying a couple like it's two, but it could have been more than 2 episodes ago when we introduced how you can draw the slanted line that shows you to repeat a chord. So there's a lot of that going on. But if you just wanted to, if the repeating bothers you, because the repeating of the chord really is to establish a rhythm. So basically you're playing these chords as quarter notes. Okay? But let's say if you say, oh, C major, I don't want to play quarter notes with that chord. I'd rather just hold it. You can do it that way too. But it sounds a little less exciting, doesn't it? Slowed down the time values a little bit, so I just played them as whole notes and then half notes, so hopefully you're able to follow that. But that's the other choice. You have a choice to do that too. Or let's say if you start to play with a band and someone wants to know that you're clear on the chord changes, but you don't want to clash with the other players. So you don't want to clash with a guitar player that's maybe playing another consistent rhythm. So you don't need to play your chords as frequently. But that's the fun part about being in a band, because once you're in a band, you can get together and collaborate and decide how you want things to be played. Okay, but let's move on. So now I've taught you 3 sequences, or at least reminded you of 3. And so, no, 4. That was one using C, F, and G, another one using C, F, and G, but in a different order, and another one using C, D, F, and G. And now we just had one in the key of D, because it started with the D chord, ended with the D chord, but it used D, E, A, and G. Okay? And then if you want to, you can just take a plain piece of paper, write these chords, put them in boxes so it's easier for you to see, and just go from chord to chord. So it's showing you how to go from chord to chord. Now another thing you can do too is just to leave the boxes empty, put words underneath these boxes, and then start to figure out, okay, which change is going to sound good with the words that I've chosen, or the melody if you're singing along. But that's something we can always talk about. So let's go back now to minor chords. So now we're going to go back to minor chords. Are you excited? You enjoying today's podcast? I hope you are. Give yourself a hand clap. Now that is definitely an example of something that starts out minor and then it goes to other things. So basically you're going from A minor to F and then D minor and then to E. Okay, but I'm going to take you to another sequence altogether of a song that uses minor chords, and it starts off with an A minor chord. So let me go there with that. So let me play it again. Then you go to G. going other places. Okay, well, let's just stay with the basic. Okay, so A minor, hit that twice, G minor, hit that twice. Oops, I said G minor. That's not G minor, that's G. A minor, now G. There we go, F, then E. Then back to A minor, G, and F, and E, A minor. Now, I think you can go to C after that. There you go. Okay, so we weren't going to the second half of that sequence. So that's where I was trying to go before. I was thinking it led to something else, but it leads to C after that. Okay, but that's a fun sequence to practice. And I'm trying to think something else that uses minor. That's an easy sequence for you to learn. Just think here. Let's see. So it's the same song, but I'm trying to think of a different one that I can use with you. Let me see. Not starting on A minor. Okay, so I'm just experimenting a little bit, trying to go from sequences, from one chord sequence to another. And that one, you can see how I need to work on that one a little bit. But the ones that I've given you so far, I think will give you a really great exercise in playing your chords. Now, I want to come back and give you, this time, something you can practice on with your flat chords. Let's see. I think what I'm going to do is... Okay, so basically I'm just going to transpose. So when we come back in a moment, what I'm going to do is start off our song that we did in C, with C, F, and G. Okay, so still thinking in terms of Roman numerals 1, 4, and 5, and I'm giving it to you starting on E flat. Okay, so your chords you're going to be using E flat, and B flat. And that's when we come back in a moment. So let me go back over here now. I'm glad to see that my computer did not go dark this time, so now I don't have the chance to click on anything that doesn't belong. So now, when we come back, I'm going to show you how to put these flat chords that we talked about last week to use. So let me just go now over to my computer and let's see if it'll play for me. There we go. You're listening to C Major Before the Show, and I will be back in a moment. Okay, so you're here with C Major Before the Show. Thank you so much for tuning in today. What I did was we took a little music break, and I'm glad to have you back because I switched out the pedal. So now I have to test it out with you to see if it's going to work the way that I think it should work. So let me just stop my music here for a moment. And we'll come back to that in a second. But now I've added a new pedal, one that's a little less squeaky, because squeaky pedals happen. So let's see if this one works. And it's from the same company. So let's see what we have here. Of course, sometimes the polarity switches on you. And so it's acting like a foot switch instead of a sustain pedal right now. Let's see if I can switch that off. See if that makes a difference. If not, I'm going to turn off my keyboard. Yeah, working the opposite the same way. Okay, that happens. That just means I need to reset it real quickly. So, give me 1 second. Okay, now turning the power back on, unplugging this, plugging it back in. Okay, now powering on back now. Powering back on. Now. So still doing the same thing. Having some technical difficulties here. Live as usual. Okay, let's see if it works better now. There we go. Okay, so now when I press my foot on the pedal, we should have sustain. And we should not have any squeak. There we go. Now, if anything, we might have have some clicking, but it definitely won't be squeaking. We might just have some clipping. So just bear with me today, because in the age of digital instruments, this is what we have to deal with. So you can always get a new pedal. Unlike on a real piano, you have to call out a technician to work on the pedal for you, maybe take the pedal part away and wait for the part to come in. But you don't have to do that with portable keyboards. Okay, so here we are. So what we're going to do now is take E flat, A flat, and B flat. And then what we're going to do is use these chords in the same sequence that we use C, F, and G. Okay? Alright, so E flat, A flat, E flat, E flat, E flat, B flat. Good. Back to E flat. Okay, so hopefully you're able to follow that. So you can change your key to any, any key you wish, any key that's necessary, especially when you're working with untrained singers that cannot use their head voice or their chest voice to help them reach the notes, or they just don't have the range. Or let's say if you're working with a soprano singer who just can't sing in that same register as an alto singer, then you may have to transpose, and then you just have to find out where you're going, if you're going up or if you're going down. So you get to decide, and that's part of being a professional too, is that you have to go with the flow. You have to really know how to change the key, and in some cases you won't have sheet music that will help you change that key. You will just have to figure out how you're going to transpose it on your own on the spot, and then just do that and be comfortable with that. But probably the easiest thing to do is to transpose like a half step higher or a half step lower. That's easy, and that can be done on the spot. That happens especially in the case of a song being published in A, and then everybody's comfortable singing an A flat, a half step lower. I've had cases where, you go to play a song in E, and E is just a half step too higher, and then you just have to go to E flat, which is easy. And if you have the score in front of you, that's easy too. Or if it's in D and you need to go to D flat. I don't really know the explanation behind this, but I feel like it changes from region to region. So if you're in a certain region of the country where everybody's comfortable singing an A flat, and then you go to another region and for some reason everybody's comfortable singing in B, which if you're not comfortable at 5 sharps can really throw you off. So if you're not used to playing in a key signature with 5 sharps and you're more comfortable playing in a key signature with A flat, then you just have to become comfortable playing in a key that uses 5 sharps and just deal with it. And it's interesting. I don't know why that happens, but it happens. So that's more on the C Major radio show side of explaining things. So we will be getting to key signatures just to give you an idea of where that show is going. So again, if you find yourself really curious to know beyond chords, what's going on with the key signature, what's going on with clef signs, what's going on with time values, how can I explain tempo, how can I start to use that language, how can I start to use some of those terms that we went over in our last episode just for conversation. And online, they posted a really, really great article or blog post where they were saying the reasons to learn music, and they gave really good reasons for adults as well as for children, young people looking to get into music making, and it makes it clear all of the reasons that you should. But what I'm also finding is that you can give all the reasons in the world to someone to have them consider getting into music making, but the bottom line really is, what do they have in their mind to do? What does a person have in their mind to do? And if they are willing to do what you're asking them to do. I've found that over my time of teaching, it really comes down to the will of a person. Because a lot of times, and I just talked with one of my colleagues about this, she has an adult student that just really cannot get his mind wrapped around what he's supposed to do with his music making. He beats himself up a lot, all of these other things come into play. And so finding a way to push him towards the confidence level that he needs to get to in order to go further. And that brings me into another conversation with you. So if you're listening here to CMajor Before the Show, thank you for listening today. We have a lot of ground to cover. Today's show is a little bit different. I've been doing some live playing more than ever on this podcast. And I just want to talk to you a little bit now about limitations, because limitations happen. So we've just talked about a student who is an adult student who is learning to play an instrument is not piano. He's not my student. He's a student of a colleague of mine. But it doesn't matter. This person has developed the will to take piano lessons, but for some reason in his mind, the confidence level is not rising up to where it needs to be. So if this sounds like you, let me just talk to you for a moment. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a counselor. I'm a person that really cares about you and what you're trying to do with your music making. And I happen to have a little experience with dealing with students that get in their own way. We've talked about this. If you saw the U.S. Open, that was one of the issues that was raised with one of the top players in Sunday's final, that this person had dealt with a lot of issues just trying to get the mind to wrap around what needed to be done so the person could go forward. I'm trying not to talk so much in terms of who the person is, but just the effort. So I think the effort a lot of times has something to do with it. Sometimes I get in my own way. I'll say that. I had a block. Because remember, we talked a few episodes ago, about me taking lessons in swing. And the funny thing about that, as soon as the podcast ended, I'm like, who's doing this? Is this a bot that's listening to my words in this podcast? I promise you, I went to YouTube. There were all of these posts recommended for you, how to play swing piano. And I just had to laugh. I just thought, okay, this is really, really funny right now. I'm not sure if I really want to learn to play swing piano. I think it's great for anyone who wants to learn to play swing piano. But that's not how I've expressed myself over the years with swing. I think it's a great thing to learn. And I know I have friends who can swing way better than me. So some of my students are really, really good at swinging. I think they have a gift for swing, just for feeling that music. But here's the happy ending to that. I did go ahead. I challenged myself. I learned a handful of keys. And I also learned that other song I was telling you about, which was an example of a very famous pianist who plays swing and Dixieland jazz. And I mentioned that person. And so I learned an example of his style of playing, and then I played that for my student. My student was very, very happy, and the student played what I like to call piano paparazzi and broke out the mobile device and recorded me playing it, and now has a picture and a video of me playing this music. And the student was happy because it motivated them. So sometimes as teachers, you have to step a little bit outside of your comfort zone, your stubbornness, to say, if you are classically trained, I'm classically trained, that's the only music I wish to play, and that's what I want to play. That's what I want to use to teach. Although that's not the case. I've had many opportunities to play all styles of music over the years, but I think you do tend to lean towards what you're comfortable with. So, but anyway, the student was happy. So why did I have a block? I was talking with another, I won't call him a colleague, it was a person that I met when I was networking in an academic circle. And the person just said to me, you must have a block. And he said it to me in a joking manner, but I knew what he meant. He said, there's a block somewhere. So for some reason, and I hope I'm saying it in a way that you can resonate and really get my point here, is that sometimes when we are failing to go forward in our lives with our music making, that is because you've decided to put a limit on yourself for whatever reason. for whatever reason. But I would just encourage you not to do that. So, whoever you are, wherever you are, if you've decided to take on the challenge of music making, just find a way to stick in there, stick with it, find your support system. Don't let anyone get in your way. Don't let anyone tell you what you're doing is inappropriate. Don't ever let anyone tell you that, especially if they aren't trying it themselves and for some reason they're standing in your way or trying to stand in your way because they may have a different agenda to pull you over to what they're doing. Sometimes that happens too. But stand your ground and say, nope, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to learn how to practice. I'm going to stay with it. Because the truth of the matter is that everyone has an opportunity now to either record music or in some way learn how to write music down, learn how to use a music app, learn how to listen better to music. I think that was one of the things in that article. The article raised this issue of being able to listen to music and know what's going on because you're studying music. So in a minute, I'm going to go over the syllabus so you can know what I expect for C Major's Classroom going forward because I have a syllabus for fall. Aren't you excited about that? Let's give a hand clap for that. I know personally I'm excited about the syllabus. I think that for the first time in the history of C Major Before the Show, we're starting to really document what our goal is here and what we're aiming to do. And it's a very exciting time. It's a very exciting time. But back to you. So, thinking about this adult student, I just couldn't help but just feel really touched by the fact that he's trying to do something outside of his comfort zone. He has the support from his family, has support from his spouse, unlike one story when I was telling on a podcast that a customer that shopped in music retail did not have the support of his family and his spouse, and he had to sneak around and find a way to do it and even take a roll-up keyboard to work. But in this case, this person who's not studying piano but studying an instrument that he dreamed of studying as a child is studying it now, has great family support. So we're just trying to encourage him because I'm sure at some point before his spouse said, yeah, go ahead and do that. Let's just set the budget so we can get you into your own music making. I'm sure at some point he said to himself, I could never do that. I'm just here to encourage you today. Do it. We're at a time now where future generations really need to see you making music so they will want to do it too. With music being taken out of so many school programs and substituted with something else that has nothing to do with music literacy, I just think it's up to us to lead the future generation. So if you are an adult and you're listening to this podcast and you happen to be tuning into this episode, just stay encouraged and know what it is that you want to pursue. So just because you watch a YouTube video or you watch your favorite television program on Netflix, not calling out Netflix, just saying something like Netflix or Hulu or what have you that's online now that you subscribe to. But you may decide you want to learn the theme song to your favorite episode. It sounds cool to do that. I mean, it could, but also start to think about all the moving parts of that. You know, is it really something you want to learn to play on piano? One of the things that I read a lot, it So I read in this one book where it's talking about how sometimes you can want to learn something that's popular, but then the question becomes, does it make sense to learn that thing? So in the case of my adult students that want to learn to play songs by their favorite pop artists, their favorite rock artists, and the list goes on, ask yourself, why do you want to learn to play something on piano that's meant to be sung in the first place or meant to be played by a band? Why not just devote yourself to learning piano music, learning piano literature, learning to play the piano, quote unquote, properly? And I think this is where I start to clash with some of my Facebook friends who think, I don't think that way. But here's the thing, you don't have to substitute your thinking for my thinking and vice versa. Everybody can think independently on their own. And I was also looking online today too. There's this very famous poem by Robert Frost. I think it was published in the early 1900s, almost at 19th century. But it's the 20th century. I think it was published in the early 1900s. And it's talking about the two roads and how sometimes that's misinterpreted, that sometimes we start to think, okay, we can think independently. But that's really not what he was intending. According to this article, he was intending to tease a friend who couldn't make up his mind. And sometimes that's us too. You can't seem to make up your mind about which road you want to take when it comes to music making. But I would just urge you to try to get clear. Everybody can think independently for themselves, but at the same time, be really clear about your intention to learn to play an instrument in the first place. Is it to impress your friends? Is it to impress a spouse? Is it to learn one particular song? Is it to mix with a certain group socially? What have you? What is your reason for that? So, you don't have to pursue every single challenge that pops in your mind about, I want to learn to play this theme song from this television show that I like. Or I saw this person, they're only 3 years old, and if they can play the piano like that, I know I can play the piano like that. I think you have to stay within your gift. And your gift to do something is going to take you beyond your limits more than you can ever imagine. So I don't think the idea is to say, I could never do that. I think the idea is, what can I do? And then start to do that and really surprise yourself, and then get with a music professional who can lead you where you need to go in your music making. Because one thing that music professionals are able to do is to draw out talent that's there. Sometimes you get with a music professional who will have an idea of where you should be placed, or they don't want to push you in a certain direction. Sometimes that happens too. That happens because they can see that learning to play a certain genre of music, for instance, may be too stressful for you, that you need to go with a different genre altogether. I think sometimes that happens in the split between learning to play classical music versus going into show music. One is more about entertainment over the other. But at the same time, I think the possibilities are limitless. I think you can become whatever it is that you really, really, really want to become. With the right support, with the right encouragement, with the right effort, and with the right will, you can become whatever you want to become. So hang in there if you're learning to play a musical instrument for the first time. You're an adult and you want to go with the best music making you can possibly make. And here's the other thing. It may turn out that your music making may evolve into something else outside of a real instrument. Suppose you have the talent to really make music virtually, that if someone would just put you in front of a computer with GarageBand, with Logic, with Sonar, with Ableton Live, with any of those programs, you might just start to light up and really know what to do. So that's a different way of thinking too, but that's a way of making music as well. Also, there's a story of a very famous conductor who was unable to make music because something happened with him playing sports, and he lost the use of his wrist, his hand, his arm, whatever it was that kept him from being able to play certain things on the piano. And his teacher was able to guide him into a different direction because he wanted to stay in music making. He fell into conducting. He loved it, and he stayed with it and went on to become a very famous, well-respected conductor. So there are lots of ways to get into music making. But I do believe this, that if you're into music making, it does help to have some piano skills at the most basic level. So here on C Major Before the Show, what we're trying to do is to have you learn music at the most basic level first, and then go on from there. So the most basic level that I know is to teach you some chords, and then show you how to put music together. So in that first lesson, especially if you're an adult, you have something to do. You're going away with a takeaway. You're motivated, and you're not just thinking, okay, you're not just thinking, okay, I'm never going to learn how to play the piano. You have some sort of motivation. You have some sort of entry into the music making, so you can see what it's like. You can see what it's like. So just have fun out there and really start to think. Don't put up any blocks for yourself, but also think about the best you can do with your music making. And don't try to do what someone else is doing. That's the other thing too. So I could say to myself, I want to become the best jazz pianist out there. I want to become a really great piano player when it comes to swing music. But is that the best expression of myself? It may not be. It may not be. There are some technical things that I enjoy doing when I play classical music. And I'm going to be having this conversation with a colleague who wants to do the opposite. She wants to trade. She wants to do classical and see how that feels, because she has a natural gift for playing jazz. And then I'm going to be learning some things from her, and just to see how that feels. But it's going to be a real-time experience. It's not going to be something that I look at a video and watch. And although I have been able to post links from some of the YouTube examples of what it means to play swing, what it means to play jazz, it's just an ongoing dialogue. It really is just an ongoing dialogue. So I don't want to say more about that, but I may be posting more of those links, but I may not be posting more of those links. So, but if you have a question about what it means to play in different genres, or if you know for a fact you want to just limit yourself to playing popular music and that's it, limit yourself to playing popular songs, then I would say get with a music professional who can steer you towards that. But if you know you want to challenge yourself to play classical, then why not go ahead and challenge yourself to play classical? There are lots of ways to play classical music. If you want to go ahead and challenge yourself to play jazz, there are lots of ways to get into that too. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to step away from my speech about getting in your own way, and I'm going to step over to the syllabus that I have set for us. So let me see if I could pull that up quickly. There it is. Okay, so what you're going to see if you go over to C Major Before the Show, you're going to see an announcement about the syllabus, and you're going to see me announce syllabus is now posted. And then what I aim to do is just take this same text and post that for you over at CMajor's Classroom. Okay, so I'm going to go over this with you in just a moment, and I'll be right back. You're here on C Major Before the Show, and you're with C Major Porter, and we're talking today about playing by chords and playing by color. And what I'm aiming to do right now is to share with you the syllabus that we are now starting to post over at C Major's Classroom. And so I think you'll enjoy this because it's different than other syllabi that are out there. It's called Playing by Chords and by Color, the Tonal Audio Workout. Maybe I should change that word workout. Tonal audio. What could I say besides workout? Let me think about that for a moment. But it really is making reference to the fall podcast, which is going on now. It's not officially fall yet, but it's definitely PSL season. So if you happen to know anybody that's celebrating PSL season, you just let me know, because we will be talking a little bit about things that are going on with the fall. And I think I promised that I was going to play some of the sound effects for you to get into. There's the monster laugh there. It's all fun, it's all jokes. I like this piano part that's in this sound effect. But basically, I just wanted to have you think about your plans for fall. So the best way to get in contact with me about the playing by chords and playing by color, the tonal audio workout class over at C Major's Classroom, is to get in touch with me on Twitter. You can get in touch with me at CMajorPorter1. And then if you care to, if you're more comfortable with joining me on Facebook, feel free to join me on Facebook over at C Major Before the Show. We're building the page over there. I know I'm starting to get some interest over there, and it's slow going at first, but it's going to grow. It's going to grow. Just know that it's going to grow. And the reason I know it's going to grow is because I'm starting to network now with some people that can help the podcast grow. Now, I know there are plenty of publicists out there, and I mean this with every kindness, and it's all love. Thank you so much for reaching out to C Major. I really appreciate all the advice I've been able to get from publicists, from various publicists that are out there. I appreciate your work. Thank you for asking me if I need your help. And I really, really wish you the best as you continue to help indie artists that are out there. I'm looking to network mostly at this point going forward with my friends in academia who are also working in the publishing field. They are They are publicists themselves, but we have that one thing in common, is that we know each other from the institution that we attended together. And so I'm looking to network with those friends at the moment and acquaintances at the moment. And then I may loop around, because I have a feeling that all publicists kind of know each other. I had that impression once. I was asked to play for an event, and it just felt like the person that was over the event knew everyone in New York. I don't think you can be a publicist or call yourself a public relations expert and not know everyone in New York if you're serious about your hustle and serious about your game. But again, thank you for everyone that's been reaching out to me, all the people in A&R, everybody. I really appreciate it. But as you grow, you have to decide which works best for you. So I'm going to be going in a different direction, but I appreciate the love and I appreciate the support that you all have given me over the years. So right now, you can contact me on Twitter at CMajorPorter1, and then if you care to, contact me on Facebook, but contact me at CMajor Before The Show. That's a public page there that I'm building. It's public at the moment. At some point, it could go private if I start to get a lot of the views that I expect to get. So the podcasts that are available right now, CMajor Before The Show, and then the CMajor Radio Show, and the podcast websites. Now, this is not my site. These are the websites of how the podcast is hosted in the first place. And I said this earlier on in today's episode. Spreaker, spelled Spreaker. You have a wonderful manager of content, a wonderful community manager, and other managers that also deal with us in the community. And they are just really wonderful. They're always thinking ahead of how you can be better. They're all types of great blog posts, and they're always encouraging you to grow. So my thing is that I want to make sure I'm really ready to grow and that I'm growing in the right way. Blog Talk Radio, log onto that as well. And then the listening policy for the podcast. So this is all part of the syllabus. So you're going to see me post that over at CMajorsClassroom. It's just basically a cut and paste of this. Listening policy. Listening to the podcast is optional, of course, as it is with any podcast. It's not a requirement. And what I'm aiming to do here in CMajor Before The Show is introduce a number of chords. I will present these in each episode. So if you miss an episode, you can always download on demand. You may ask a friend. You may ask a family member to listen live if you are unable to tune in for yourself. Adult learners of all ages, professions, non-musicians, and musicians are invited to subscribe and follow the podcast. And let me say this, I follow radio and television pretty closely. I'm always watching to see what's going on. I was really surprised to see. I'm not going to say the person's name because I don't want it coming back to me. Why were you talking about this person and saying their name and using their name for your podcast? It's not about that. It's just you have to be really, really careful. I don't have permission ahead of time to say the name, so I'm not going to say the name. But it's a very famous host whose program is now based in California. I'll just describe it. And I was really surprised to see this person sitting down at a piano and playing a couple of chords. Now you could hear that he had a backup keyboard player to help him. And then there was this really great backup singer that was singing along with this made-up song that was, of course, done in the name of comedy and entertaining the audience and at the same time answering a question. But I thought it was really fascinating that this person was sitting at the piano. So that was encouraging because he was just playing just a couple of basic chords. So non-musicians are invited to subscribe and follow the podcast. If you happen to be like this famous host and you're just playing the piano for fun, what I would encourage you to do, get with a music professional to find out where your hands are placed and find out what the name of that is so you have control over that sound and you know how to go to that every single time Just find out the name of it. That's what I like to encourage my adult learners to do. Find out when you stop playing a chord and you look down, find out where you are on the piano. That's really going to help you in the future. So you can say, when I sing, I like to play, and then you fill in the blank, this chord. And then I like to go from that chord leading to and be able to name what that chord is. So you have some sort of control over your own creativity. And you're not just waiting to go to a session, or if somebody asks you, what were you doing on the piano, you can say what it was you were doing. I just think there's something to that. I think it really gives you creative control over your own music making. So, the C Major Before the Show podcast usually starts at around 9-ish on a Tuesday. Today is not Tuesday, it's Monday. And like I was saying, it's a celebration, it's an observation for some people in the greater New York City area especially, and some people that I personally know. And so we changed the date to today. And also, if you're in the greater New York City area for tomorrow, you know that tomorrow is also a day that's going to be observed, but for a different reason in New York history, and that's 9/11. But if we change the date, we'll let you know ahead of time, so look for the post. There are other dates and times to be announced. The C Major Radio Show is also changing this week. The C Major Radio Show podcast usually broadcasts on Wednesdays at 11 Eastern Time, but both podcasts take place within the greater New York City area. So just look for when there will be some time changes. So this week for the C Major Radio Show, we're going to be broadcasting on Thursday this week. Okay, but again, that's just part of the listening policy. So basically for the listening policy, just watch to see what times are posted, or watch to see the Facebook page for any postings that will tell you what we're doing that day or that week. You may have noticed that the poll has come to a stop, and I think that as we grow over time, we'll be able to restore the poll. But the next category on the syllabus is homework and tests. So let's go to that. So homework and tests. Homework will be assigned during each podcast unless announced otherwise. So what we're aiming to do today is go to the homework section of today's episode as we are approaching the third hour. So after we've been on for 120 minutes, just know, starting the minute after that, we're going into the homework segment. What I'm aiming to do in the homework segment is just to break things down a little bit more, or either to give you something else to work on. So far, I've gone over all the chords, I've given you some sequences. What we're going to do in the third hour is to encourage you to start putting some rhythms with those chords. Okay, so that's something to look forward to. Excuse me. So homework will be assigned during each podcast unless announced otherwise. Now, when you hear the "Did you do your homework" sound effect, so that's this, followed by the suspense sound effect, it's a chance to check and see if you remember what we spoke about in the previous episode. So if you're listening with your friends, you're like, oh yeah, she talked about that last week. So keep listening, see if you remember. I'll try to refresh your memory, and then we'll go forward from there. If for some reason you're having trouble completing your homework, please send me a note so that I can help you find a tutor. And that's true. I'm a tutor myself, but if you're having problems, I want to know so I can steer you in a direction where you may be able to find someone. Believe it or not, people are still doing it the old grassroots way. I was in a music store the other day, and they have a bulletin board, and there's all this paper all over the wall. It looks very cluttered, and I know they make an effort to clean it at least monthly, but there's all this cluttered posting of flyers and business cards and postcards and you name it, of everybody trying to get their name out there. What you don't realize is that as soon as you put your stuff up there, somebody can come and take it down, especially if they're a competitor. So then your efforts go in the garbage, literally. So you just have to be careful of that. Just be aware of that. Unless you're in a position to check it daily, I would say that it's a hit or miss. And so there are tutors all over the place, especially in New York. You have tutors that now work in studios where they allow teachers to come and do their lessons there. And then you have tutors that still work out of their homes. And then you have tutors that are fortunate to work in a studio, and tutors that are able to come to you. So if you're looking for a tutor, you want a referral, I will do my best to send you to someone that I know that's reputable, that can really help you and won't just take your money and not help you. We are on a global podcast. So CMajor Before the Show is a global podcast. It's not a local podcast, but what you will hear is that we do mention things that are going on in New York, because New York by its very nature is global. So if you hear me mention something that's going on in the city, it's because I know that it affects a lot of people. A lot of people understand a lot of the landmarks that I mentioned. Almost everyone has heard of Juilliard, Jazz at Lincoln Center. Everyone has heard of the New York Philharmonic. Avery Fisher Hall is now David Geffen Hall. So you may hear me mention some things that are going on in New York. And if you happen to be in this area, just to look out for those things. So please feel free to collaborate on homework. That's a lot of times that's not encouraged in a real classroom setting, meaning where you are sitting within four walls and a door, and you're expected to do everything the teacher is asking you to do, and you're not expected to get together on homework. Now, I was a little surprised to know that's still going on, because in the age of technology, everyone can collaborate. What's to stop a student from going online and hiring a study group to help them with their homework? Or by hire, I just mean putting together a study group. That's what social media is about, is putting together a group so that you're not alone in what you're going through. So I was a little surprised to see that. But I think what they mean is that if you're in a classroom setting, and let's say if you're in a class where there are 10 people, the teacher doesn't want to know that you all got together and just did each other's homework and you're just handing it in, and when they check it, they're not going to see anything original or creative coming out of it. I think that's what they mean. But you don't have to worry about that here over at CMajor Before the Show. On our syllabus for CMajorsClassroom, we want you to collaborate on the homework. So I've mentioned chords, I've mentioned triads, I've mentioned that we're going to be talking about 7 chords in the future. And I mentioned that in our third hour today, we're going to talk about how to start moving those chords around, how to break them up, playing them in a little bit more creative way rhythmically. And I don't see any reason to get help from a music professional or help from your friends when it comes to something like that. So feel free to download this podcast, whether you're aiming to teach music theory and aiming to start a school yourself. That's great. I think the more the merrier, and I wish you the best with that. Teaching is not easy. I don't believe that saying that if you can't perform, you should teach. I think that a lot of my friends have always taught. Whether they were good at it is a different thing, but I think that's expected, that at least you can provide a master class, or in some cases they call them clinics. You can do a clinic, you can do a demonstration. All of my friends are performing, they're teaching, they're recording, they're writing, you name it. They're wearing many different hats, and they're good at everything that they do. I don't think they feel that just because they teach a class is because their performing is falling by the wayside. I don't think that's it. So I would just encourage you to get with someone who can help you as much as you need to be helped. Just be careful of how much you are paying to receive that help, if any at all, and ask for referrals. I would go to your instructor and see if your instructor can make a recommendation for you about who to ask help from and if they approve of that. So please feel free to collaborate on homework, tests, and other writing assignments as needed. Yes, we will have some tests from time to time because they're getting to the point now where I'm just going to ask you to put together a sequence on your own and see what you come up with. And if you happen to be writing into the show, if you are comfortable with me sharing those, I will share those and so forth. So the podcast schedule every week for multiple hours. We're going to be talking about music and music making. Stay tuned for any upcoming topics and any other episode descriptions as we go. And thank you so much for listening. So you're here on CMajor Before The Show. We are, in about 7 minutes, going to be approaching our third hour. We're already approaching our third hour. So we're about 7 minutes away from going into our third hour where I'm going to be helping you with your homework. So what I want to do now, I want to regroup. Let me get back over to my keyboard, and I'm going to put some music on real quick, and then I'll be right back. Well, let's see what I can pull up in the interim. And keep listening. You're listening to C Major Before the Show. Okay, I'm back with you here, and you're listening to C Major Before the Show. Thank you for listening today. Thank you for tuning in. And I'm going to go back now over to my piano because I was talking about lessons earlier, and now I'm going to share with you that I'm very happy that I'm going to be playing with a colleague, and we're going to be rehearsing this week on something classical. So it's by the composer Brahms, one of my favorite composers. So if you happen to listen to the music of Brahms, then you might be interested to know that I'm working on this piece. So I have a lot of I have a lot of rehearsing to do on my own first before I am ready to rehearse with him. So what I like about looking at something like this is that you can start to see the construction of it. So that's what I mean. I mean, if you're learning to play by chords and by ear, that's great. But sooner or later, you want to know how to analyze tonal music. You know, how is everything spelled out. And so here I can see right away I'm going to be playing some octaves in my right hand, a lot of octaves, because Brahms is known for that type of writing. So in my right hand I'm already starting out. My piano back on now. Hopefully it's working in GarageBand. Let's see. So, if you hear that, it sounds very different than playing chords. Chords would be something more like, something more dense. Okay, which is what we're talking about today. So, what reading music can do is to help you understand the construction of a song. Like, what's the structure, what's going on harmonically, what's really happening in the song. And a lot of the things you realize you already know. So let me get back to my piano sound in GarageBand, because what I'm going to do now, we're about a minute and 50 seconds away from our third hour. Here we go. I think we're back over to our GarageBand sound. Oh, I see. We're sharing this now with my recording. So let's turn this off for a moment and let's go to the piano sound. There we go. Okay, so what I want to do for the third hour, I'm probably going to spend anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes just really going over how to use these chords that we talked about. So here we are, about a minute, a little bit over a minute away. And thank you so much for tuning in to CMajor Before the Show. A very exciting part of the show. Now we're moving into the homework hour. So give yourselves a round of applause for hanging in there. And thank you so much for listening to CMajor Before the Show. Here we go. So here we are. What I'm going to show you now is how to play these chords in a fuller position. Okay, so you've been used to playing them as triads, but if you play them fuller, now we can talk about inversions, because all I'm doing is taking this, okay, and playing it as a triad, and then I'm adding a root on the outside of that on either side. You hear how I did that? Okay, so basically, let me spell it out for you, because we can do that in the homework hour. So I'm basically going C, E, G, and then I'm adding a C up top and a C down on the bottom. Okay, so it looks that if I took my left hand away, that my right hand is positioned on E, G, and C, which is a first inversion C chord, right? Now, if I go back to where I was, both hands playing together, and then I took my right hand away, it appears that my left hand is playing a C octave. Okay, so I hope you're following all of this. There will not be pictures of this. You'll just have to trust me. So the spelling of it, if you want to spell it out on a piece of paper, just write C, C, E, G, C. Okay. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing for F. Okay, spelling it out for you, playing in that full position. F, F, A, C, F. Then going to G. Same thing. G, G, B, D, G. Okay, then going back to C. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just show you how to move your hands around. So think in terms of left and right hand relationship. So left, and then break it up. and then come back down. Left hand. Right hand just finished playing. Now go. Left hand goes to F chord and do the same thing. Same thing on G. And go back to C. Now I know it sounds to you like I'm making a lot more music than what I was making before, right? Because I'm not playing everything that's blocked, but it really is the same thing. And you'll be amazed at how many musicians out there can make a career just out of 3 chords and just by doing just that. It really makes you sound like you know what you're doing. So play this back with your music teacher, this portion of the podcast, so they can show you how to play this. Also, if you're thinking rhythmically about this, you should be able to notate what the rhythm is. Or if you're thinking about this in terms of notation, you should be able to write this on the staff as well. So, and you can decide the order. Okay, so that was the exact same song that I played earlier. And you're going to go, what? What do you mean it was the exact same song? It really was. I just followed the same sequence. All I did was just put a rhythm with it. Let me do that same song again, just to stay on the sequence. And I'm going to use a different rhythm this time and see if you can follow it. Hopefully you're able to hear where those changes are, okay? So what I aim to do probably in the next episode, because I don't want to give everything away in one whole episode, is to show you how to start to put chords together to create melody. So it just popped into my mind just now. I think you may be ready for that. And that's going to go very nicely as we begin to talk about 7th chords. So 7th chords will be coming up for the next episode. So I know you don't want to miss. I know you don't want to miss that. That's such an important episode because now that we're starting to put more sounds together, C, F, and G. Okay. Now we've talked about minor chords. C minor, F minor, G minor, right? Okay, now what if I wanted to make it a 7th chord? So your homework assignment between now and then is to find out what a seventh chord is. So go ahead and educate yourself ahead of time so that you're not feeling totally lost. And then we'll talk about the definitions that are available to you. So if you have access to a music dictionary, if you are able to look on Google, if you're able to get with a music professional and talk with them about seventh chords, and they can explain it in a way that you understand, that's not frustrating to you or makes you feel like you've run into a block. Say it like that, because we don't want you to feel that way. We want you to feel free enough to express yourself. It's all music. So just to give you an idea what seventh chords is going to sound like, that's a C7 chord. That's an F7 chord. That's a G7 chord. Back to a C7 chord. Now I'm going to play a C major 7 chord. Okay. Now F major 7 chord. G major 7 chord. Those are the dreamy sounding chords. I remember when I first started writing when I was in college, and I wasn't quite sure how to label my chords. I'd done some writing in elementary school, but it wasn't until I revisited writing in college when my professor looked at me and said, "What you put together makes no sense." And it was because I liked the sound of major 7 chords, so I just wrote a whole entire song using nothing but dreamy sounding major 7 chords. What he had hoped to see was me showing how chords can lead to and away from another, and to use a variety of chords and to know what to call those and not just go by sound. So I have been challenged with that in the past, and even some of my friends will say, you lead with your feelings, you write what you're feeling. Now that's true, I do, but I can also write intellectually just like the other person, but I like to see sometimes what it leads to when I'm feeling something and just to sit down and write. So because I know enough about music to know how to incorporate C major scale, or I know enough to start higher, and where to stop with my left hand so it doesn't go all the way down. And I know how to put a rhythm with a C chord that I like. And that's basically the start of that song, is that it's me playing a descending C major chord, playing it in thirds, stopping on the tonic in my left hand, and then going ahead and just starting to create rhythm on a C major chord, and then take it from there and then start to put in the melody. So that song, I would say, was all written on feel. So I had another colleague of mine that was talking about writing, and she said, "Oh, I think it's so nice how you just make up songs." And I thought, wow, okay. I guess it sounds like that, like I just made something up, but I really did put some thought into it. But I did not write from an intellectual perspective. Now, that's different. When you actually sit down and you compose the way that Brahms composed, that's real composition right there, I would say. But I think sometimes songwriting comes off as being a different experience than actually composing. So I think when you compose something, you work at it. I think in my case with songwriting and writing solo piano songs in the manner that I do, I think it comes away with a feeling of just being made up on the spot, just being more pedestrian, or music that just kind of ushers you from one place to the next. But I think that's the beauty of writing. And once you understand how chords are put together, you can do whatever you want. And no one should tell you you're doing it wrong, because it's your music. You get to decide what to do with your music. So if I want to write from a place of feelings, I can write from a place of feelings. But I guarantee you, when you start looking at the music of Brahms and you start analyzing his music, even though he does an opening right here with chords, let me just play that again for you because I played it earlier. Chords like this. Okay, so that's definitely a G chord, right? And then he goes on to other. Okay, and then he goes on from there. So he intentionally wrote those as chords, as block chords. But Brahms uses so many arpeggios, and he uses so many wide intervals in his writing. He could have broken that up at the beginning. Right? He could have done that. So the question becomes, why didn't Brahms do that? But the more important thing is that when you're playing a piece like this, or you have to analyze it, when you stop to look down at your hands, you should know exactly where you are on the piano. So what I see, if I break this up, I see that my left hand is playing a G octave. That just means from G down to the other G. The G, that's an octave lower, 8 keys down. And then my right hand is on a D, a G, and a B, which I know is a second inversion G chord. So if you happen to be taking a music theory class and you are, let's say, a person that plays an instrument different than piano, and you really need help with knowing where you are when you stop to take a look at where your hands are located on the piano, make sure you get with a teacher who has experience in piano and who understands theory really, really well, that they can tell you exactly what you're doing. Sometimes students get confused when they start to see that the chords are broken up on one stave versus another stave. And then they don't know what to call it, or they know how to label it, or they're not used to playing arpeggios. If you play an instrument that's monophonic and you just only have to deal with one clef and one line of music, then you may be a little confused. Just make sure you have the right teacher that's going to help explain that to you. Listen, it's been great being with you today. I really enjoyed today, and we went a little bit longer than I think we thought we would go today. So we've almost made it to the 15-minute mark. So that puts us at the longest episode so far. I invite you to join me right here on CMajor Before the Show. Join me again next week, because we'll be talking a little bit more in depth about 7 chords. And I'm very happy to spend this time with you. Look for the syllabus that's going to be posted over at CMajorsClassroom. Send me a tweet over at CMajorPorter1. I'd be happy to hear from you. Go to iTunes and give us a rating over there. It's the only way we're going to know how we're doing. We need you at this point. So we're taking the good with the bad with the ugly, and everything that the Wild Wild West internet offers, and we're just staying positive and going with the flow. So thank you so much for tuning in. I also invite you to tune in to C Major over at C Major Radio Show. That's going to be later on this week. Look at the podcast description for this week. We will be talking more about tempo and then rhythm. We're going to throw in some conversation about rhythm. If you know of any friends or family or music professionals that would like to come on the show and add their 2 cents and to give their opinions about any of the topics that we cover over there, please feel free to invite them and let me know so I can send them an official invite. And if it's possible, get together for a cup of coffee at Starbucks and to really talk about their intention for their music making. But I invite you to tune in for another week right here on C Major Before the Show. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and I'll see you right here live next week. Take care.